In the late 1980s, Japan was the envy of the world. It was a nation that had risen from the ashes of war to become an economic titan. The world looked east and saw the future. Gleaming skyscrapers, unstoppable exports, and a stock market that only knew one direction up. At its peak, the land under Tokyo's Imperial Palace was said to be worth more than all the real estate in California. Think about that. An island nation, smaller than a single U.S. state, supposedly held more land value than the entire United States. And then, it all vanished. Almost overnight, an entire nation's wealth evaporated. Stock prices collapsed. Property values plummeted. Japan, once the unstoppable economic superpower, entered a period so long and painful that we now call it the lost decade. How does a nation go from such incredible prosperity to decades of stagnation? And more importantly, could the same thing happen again? Maybe even in your country. Today, we unraveled the Japanese asset bubble, the rise, the madness, and the mysterious crash that rewrote modern economics. After World War II, Japan was in ruins. Yet, in just a few decades, it transformed into a global industrial powerhouse, becoming the second largest economy on Earth. Through a powerful alliance between the government, banks, and large industrial firms, known as the Nikkei. The government managed credit and industrial policy with surgical precision, funneling money to strategic industries. Exports boomed, and the world marveled at the happiness miracle. But behind that miracle, a financial system addicted to easy credit was brewing. Then came the 1980s. In 1985, the Plaza Accord was signed to weaken the US dollar, which meant strengthening the Japanese yen. And it did. For Japan's export-driven economy, this was a disaster. Suddenly, Japanese products became far more expensive overseas, and growth faltered. The Bank of Japan responded with what seemed like a logical fix. They lowered interest rates. These interest rate cuts were meant to cushion the economy, but they had an unintended side effect. They ignited one of the greatest speculative booms in history. Cheap money flooded the system. Corporations borrowed heavily to buy land and stocks. Banks, encouraged by deregulation, lent aggressively. And ordinary citizens, seeing asset prices rise, began to believe that land could only go up. In Japan, land is more than just property. It's security, status, and identity. With limited land available, scarcity fed the frenzy. Soon, Tokyo real estate prices began to defy logic. A small home could be worth millions. The Nikkei stock index, Japan's equivalent of the Dow Jones, doubled between 1985 and 1987, and then doubled again by 1989. Everyone wanted in. Banks lent money with little scrutiny, assuming land values would always rise. Even art and golf club memberships became speculative investments. By 1989, the total land value of Japan was estimated at an unbelievable 4 times that of the entire United States. This was an era of surreal prosperity. People thought Japan had discovered a new economic model that the West couldn't match. With the yen strong, Japanese corporations went on a global shopping spree, buying Rockefeller Center in New York, Pebble Beach Golf Course in California, and Hollywood studios. But beneath the glitter, the foundation was rotting. The loans fueling this boom weren't based on productivity. They were based on collateral value. Banks didn't ask, "Can this company make money?" They asked, "How much is your land worth?" As long as land prices rose, the system worked beautifully. But it was a financial house of cards, built on the illusion that prices would rise forever. On December 29, 1989, the Nikkei index closed at its all-time high of 38,915. Tokyo's skyline sparkled. The future looked invincible. No one realized they were standing on the edge of a cliff. In early 1990, the Bank of Japan grew nervous. Asset prices were clearly out of control. They did what central banks do when bubbles form. They tightened. Interest rates were raised 5 times in less than a year. Almost immediately, the air began to leak out of the bubble. Stock prices wobbled, then plunged. Trillions of dollars in paper wealth evaporated. But the real shock came when land prices, once thought to be immune, began to fall too. At first, people called it a correction. then a slowdown, then a crash. By 1992, the Nikkei had fallen more than 60% from its peak. Property prices tumbled year after year. The aftermath was catastrophic. Japan's mighty financial system was banks, sitting on mountains of bad loans, stopped lending. Companies stopped borrowing. Consumers, watching their wealth vanish, stopped spending. Economic growth flatlined. The 1990s became known as the lost decade, a period where near-zero interest rates couldn't reignite growth. Optimism turned to resignation, and it didn't just end in the 90s. For much of the next 20 years, Japan wrestled with stagnation. An entire generation grew up in an economy where success felt like a thing of the past. The Japanese government tried everything. Massive public works projects, zero interest rates, quantitative easing. But nothing seemed to work. Why? Because the problem wasn't just financial. It was psychological. When an entire nation watches its wealth disappear, confidence collapses. People stop investing. Businesses stop expanding. Economists call this a liquidity trap. Japan lived it. As if that weren't enough, a new challenge emerged. Demographics. Japan's population began to shrink and age rapidly, making recovery even harder. The asset bubble didn't just hurt Japan's economy, it changed its destiny. Now, here's where the story gets uncomfortable. The Japanese bubble isn't just history, it's a warning. Look around today. Ultra-low interest rates, sky-high real estate, speculative stock rallies fueled by cheap money. Sound familiar? From the U.S. housing bubble of 2008 to China's property boom and the global asset inflation after 2020, the same forces appear again and again. In Japan, land once sold for $350,000 per square meter. Recently, digital land in the metaverse was selling for the same price with no physical existence. The instruments change, but the psychology doesn't. It's always the same story. Cheap money, rising confidence, then panic and regret. Economists still debate if Japan could have prevented the crash. But maybe the real lesson is simpler. When wealth grows faster than productivity, when speculation replaces creation, a collapse isn't a matter of asterisk. If asterisk, it's a matter of asterisk. When asterisk. So what can we learn from this? First, easy money creates illusions. When credit is cheap, people stop asking if an investment makes sense and only ask if it makes a profit. Second, wealth built on speculation isn't real. Japan looked richer than ever in 1989, but most of that wealth was just on paper. When reality hit, it vanished. And third, economic wounds outlast crashes. Japan's lost decade shows that financial crises don't just destroy money, they destroy confidence, and rebuilding that can take generations. In the end, the Japanese asset bubble was a story about belief in endless growth and infallible systems. But progress has to be built on something real. Innovation, productivity, human effort. The Japanese bubble burst over 30 years ago, yet its shadow still stretches across modern economics. So next time you see headlines about an unstoppable market or a new asset boom, remember Japan, because not long ago, they said the same thing there, and a nation's wealth vanished overnight. If you found this story eye-opening, please give this video a like, and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden stories that shape our world. Let me know in the comments, do you think another bubble is building somewhere right now? Thanks for watching.